This is to advise those present at this meeting, the Board of Education of Pinelands Regional School District in the County of Ocean, that adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. The notice has been posted in the Board of Education office, junior high school, and high school buildings. The notice was also mailed to the Press of Atlantic City and filed with the municipal clerks of Bass River Township, Eagleswood Township, Eagleswood Carver Township, and the Borough of Tuckerton. Roll call, Mr. Brown.
All right, Mr. Barchetto had informed me he would be a little bit late. He had a 5 o'clock meeting, but he's on the way.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, absent. Mr. Kabricki.
Here.
Ms. Palladino, also absent. Ms. Hannadel.
Here.
Ms. Papakua.
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh.
Here.
Ms. Chambers,
She will be out.
absent. And Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
We are in session at 5:35.
As the board has no business for executive session tonight, I'm going to call for a half an hour recess. Because we can't really begin the meeting
You want a
until,
motion?
that's what I'm asking for.
Motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in recess until 6 o'clock.
Everybody eating?
Eat. Enjoy. to order. The declaration has been read and roll call has been taken. Mr. Brown, you updated our roll call, correct?
I'm going to take it again. because we
Okay,
have a number of
all
people
right.
absent. Mr. Barchetto?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Kubricki?
Here.
Ms. Palladino? Is marked absent. Ms. Hannado?
Yes.
Ms. Paplakua?
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh?
Yes.
Mrs. Chambers is absent, and Mr. Ernst.
Yes.
We have a quorum. We're in session at 6 p.m.
All right, can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Over here.
Where's the flag? Oh, there it is.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before beginning our regular meeting, because I noticed that I just kind of sounded like I had a few tubes before I came, I did have dental surgery, so sometimes my mouth doesn't work quite well. So if it sounds like I'm slurring my words, it is not because I was imbibing. All right, moving along then, may I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented?
So made. Second.
Any questions? All ayes?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Approval of the minutes, which would be A and B, open sessions and closed session. May I have a motion, please?
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
All ayes?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Yes.
I'm going to abstain from the
I have to abstain from September 26th because I was not here.
Me too.
I have to abstain from the executive session minutes.
Okay, that carries.
All right, moving on to item number 7, report of the superintendent. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McCooley.
Thank you. I have a few items tonight for my update. First, on your agenda, you will see approval of a pilot program that we are looking to implement, as well as there will be a presentation. We have been selected out of 40 schools in New Jersey to participate in an LGBTQ pilot program for our 8th grade specifically. As I said, more information will be presented tonight in the presentation, and there will be time for discussion and questions. Last night, I held a Facebook Live session for all community members, more specifically for the parents of Pinelands and for Little Egg Harbor. This is the second time I've done this. It was at 7 o'clock last night. Scott Rush, one of our parents, actually hosted it for me through his site, and it went extremely well. We had an overwhelmingly amount of people participate. They asked really great questions. We were able to have a dialogue. It went for the full hour back and forth with questions, and I got a really good feedback about it. So it's nice. Parents can ask questions from the comfort of their home, from their phone, from their laptop. So I'm planning on doing this again in February. I think it's a nice way to reach out to the community. So little update on that, and you're always welcome to jump on. I know Ms. Ernst was on there last night watching. Nick and I have looked into getting a price to have an somewhat of an, not necessarily an audit, but just an overview of our technology, specifically the infrastructure, how it's corresponding from one building to the next, the speed, if anything was altered during construction, and to get some feedback from that report so we can write our technology plan moving forward. So we're still in the midst of getting some pricing together for that, but we'll let the board know when we have some more information on that. Also along those lines, we are looking into having a quote for something done similarly with the referendum, just to make sure that everything was done as, per the original plans, and to make sure that nothing was missed. So depending on the cost, we will make a recommendation to the board to move forward. So we are just gathering that information right now. I met with Stockton, once again, wonderful partner that we have with Mr. Henderson and Ms. Kenny. And this time, we spoke about an exciting new opportunity, another dual enrollment program, but this is not necessarily your AP student. It's more for those that do service learning projects. So Stockton offers 2 courses that our students could partake in that are already doing a lot of service learning projects with the community. For example, we have the Wildcats in Action Group, Lead and Seed, our Interact group, students, the SAD group, Students Against Disruptive Decisions. I know it's changed, thank you. But these students will still do the same service learning that they've been doing, but then they get to go on to Stockton and fill out different forums and do different assignments through that to get the dual enrollment credits through Stockton. So it's pretty neat because it really doesn't apply to that typical AP student. It's not your athlete, but it's something for this type of student. So I know part of our goal, our board goal, is to really have something for everyone. So now this is another opportunity. So we got to meet with Stockton, and Miss Collins Davies, one of our parents who works for Stockton, she had come in with another rep from Stockton, and we had a great conversation about it. So she's helping us with some more opportunities for them. The agenda format, I know, has been a bit of a concern. I know there's been some frustration. Please understand that we've had a lot of sudden issues in our business office, and there are many people on leave right now. We are really doing the best we can. I know it's an issue that sometimes the links are not opening. If you request access, I can assure you that I'm on that night and day, and I can give you access within 30 minutes. But if there is a problem and the board decides that this is not the format they want to follow, we could always just scan everything in as one big PDF document. The problem with that is you can't click on a link and see the document immediately. You have to scroll down to that document to read it. Just something to consider. I think that we can revisit this again in January when we have the new board members to see what everyone's comfort level is with Google Docs and to see what everyone prefers. I'd like to have a shout out to Miss Leanne Lacuter, one of our teachers. She has been selected as a Light Rock Teacher of the Month, and she was nominated by one of her students. They get to have a pizza party. She gets an award, and her student is actually eligible for a scholarship. She's in the running for that now, the one that nominated her. So it's very exciting. And Leanne, we spoke today, she was very excited about it. And that's all I have for my update. I'm going to turn it over now to Nick Brown.
Thanks, Dr. M. And then to your one point, I did speak to James about access to documents for the agenda, and we'll try to get a couple options for us to consider that going forward.
Good.
All right, so the Budget Committee had its inaugural kickoff meeting for the budget planning for the upcoming, for next school year. The Budget and Finance Committee met on October 30th to set the board's 2021 budget goals. So I'm going to review what the committee came up with today. We're going to look to adopt the goals at the December meeting. What I wanted to do is introduce them today and then allow for some comment and discussion over the next 30 days before they're on the agenda. All right, so the important thing here was to provide all Pineland students with an opportunity to learn and grow. And so there was a lot of discussion on equity in that, and I think that was, I want to commend Mrs. McVeigh and Mr. Barchetto as a really deep discussion on some of the issues that face the district. And so the board goal number 1 was to increase the general fund commitment money to programs and services that benefit the social and emotional well-being of all students and staff. And so we talked about which programs do impact the social and emotional well-being, and some of the ones on that list are school-based youth services, our guidance department, and our staff mental health professional who gets that utilized by staff and students alike. The second goal was to protect the community's investment by dedicating the necessary funds to ensure the proper annual maintenance of all new and existing district assets. The the community has made a substantial investment of just south of $54 million, new tracks, new buildings. Our priority is to do the proper maintenance and upkeep on that stuff to prolong its useful life as long as possible. Board goal number 3 was to continue the expansion of dual credit course offerings, JAGS program, and vocational programs offered by the district, and ensure that they align with the needs of the students. So we talked about increasing the number of dual credit courses, stepped vocational programs geared towards the trades, and the expansion of the JAGS program and the alignment of that program to vocational offerings. My apologies for the typo. The committee had some interesting discussion here about the vocational piece of this. So what they had asked for, and we've prepared this information, it's in the Budget Committee's folder, was for additional information related to the programs, the total regular enrollment of Pineland students in county schools, tuition and transportation costs. We looked at a number just under 400,000 for a little over 100 kids. And then what are our in-house vocational offerings and where could we find some good symmetry there? So board goal number 4 was to dedicate the savings from shared service agreements to offer professional development to coaches and activity advisors. The PD would help our coaches and advisors identify the students that are excelling in their activity, sport or otherwise, but maybe struggling in the classroom and connect those students to resources that benefit their path to college or employment. And so this one would be accomplished through some professional development and community-oriented programs to get some better contact with those coaches and advisors to the parents in the community. So before I move on to the next one, any questions or comments about the goals that we outlined there?
I have one question. The budget folder that has been created, is that available to all board members or no?
Yeah, so I was going to take the documents that we've developed here. So we had the meeting minutes, the agenda for that meeting, and the 2 documents I discussed here, the sort of the overview of the vocational program offerings.
Right.
I'll make all those documents available in the board of the whole folder.
Okay.
I actually have that note in my thing now to share them after the meeting. So use that, and we can provide comments. You can review those and email those. We want to get away from having a quorum discussing the budget goals outside of the meeting.
Absolutely.
So we'll make them in the board of the whole folder, not in a Q&A doc, but you can go into that folder. Everybody should have access to it, and you can, if you have specific questions or comments, you can direct them to me, and I'll incorporate them into the discussion in December.
Okay, and I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Go ahead.
But then I would ask Dr. McCooley, there was also some question about the folder regarding the reports and getting that straightened out. So the administrative reports that are
Yes.
for the board.
Yep.
Is that all straightened out now? That's all available?
Mhm.
How do they get to that? I mean, how do you actually access it? Just
So
pretend I'm dumb.
when you go into your Google Drive, there's a folder that says Board of Education.
Right,
Once you go into that folder, there's another one that says Administrative Reports.
okay.
And then everything's in there. And
Everybody-
it's by month.
Okay, so it's on the left-hand side of our computers when we open it up, Board of Education. It's a folder in there for us, and all we need to do is click on it,
Yeah.
okay? And that would be the same with the budget notes, yes? It would be in the same place?
If you guys would like it there for ease, I will make sure it goes there. I would prefer to make this as simple as possible. So we have an existing folder, I will put it in that existing
Bless you.
folder.
Bless you. That, I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, for me, I like simple.
Yeah, all in one place is good. I'll put it right
All in
there.
one
It'll be a 2021 budget
Okay.
folder
All right.
for you.
And thank you very much for this, Nick
Yeah, no
and
problem.
committee.
And we'll also we'll also be discussing administrative cost limits. I know that Mr. Kubricki and I have discussed that before. We'll discuss administrative cost limits as part of that, and that'll be part of the December meeting as well.
Okay, great.
Excuse me, Madam President, with the Budget Committee and the discussion, was this being looked at to be able to achieve these things within the 2% parameters? Or I haven't gotten that far yet?
We're setting goals, so we don't know the revenue picture yet. And to be honest, the tax rate is a function of net value taxable. You know, if our 2% is worth 400,000 and our home values stay flat, that's going to be $20 a homeowner per year. If we need 400,000 and the home prices go up, your taxes could go down for the school. So I think it's premature to have the conversation about the tax impact before we see the rest of the financial picture.
The other reason I was asking that, we're operating within our means
Right.
of availability. Do we know what our October 15th number was for students?
Off the top of my head, I do not recall
Okay,
the
I'm sorry.
ASSA
I should have
count for the
I should have
district.
emailed it. Okay.
But I want to say just under 1,600 kids. It was almost identical in the two schools.
Sorry.
If you don't mind too, Nick, I just wanted to point something out. Karen County actually had a good idea that, you know, a lot of times we're talking about the vocational school that we send the students to, and we're saying, could we emulate programs here? And not saying we couldn't, but she had a good idea that at some point, board members or a couple of them maybe take a tour of the VOTEC school to see what the offerings are there, to see the difference. And they are there for a longer portion of the day. So I think it gives a better perspective to know what we're competing with. The other piece of that is the more electives we offer with the current schedule as set in the contract, you have less students in there. Because the way the schedule is now, they can really only have 2 electives because of it's in the contract the way it is. So if we're offering more electives and they only can choose 2, you have less students in those electives. So that's just something the board's gonna have to know going into that.
Which comes down to some choices.
Exactly.
Yeah, priority, right? So that was the point of that first exercise, is sort of identifying what the priorities were for the committee, bring them to the board for discussion, and then have some input over the next 30-plus days.
So, just if I could follow up on Mr. Williams' comment with the 2%, something that I would ask the committee to consider what we've done in the past is, right, build our budget or preliminary budget assuming no change in values, right? We know what 2% is worth, we know the dollars that we have to work within. I would encourage us to work within that or even below that, right? And let's not pretend that we have an unlimited bank to work with and it depends on what happens with our values. For the most part, things are relatively stable. So I think we do know the parameters if the board is supporting to work within the grade.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions or comments before Nick?
Just one, to
Continues.
follow up on the vocational school, we did talk about that
Mhm.
a year ago too, that we were gonna try to see what, because there is so many, other counties do so much more with VOTEC. It's, like Burlington does great, so it would be great to know what they're doing,
Mhm.
so we could see if there's a way to expand that, if we can go a different direction too. So we should really set that up this time.
And I think Mr. Barchetta did a really nice job of articulating some of the challenges that we have budgetarily in competing with county programs, because they don't have the same resource challenges that we have.
Right.
Their budget's approved by the Board of Freeholders.
Right, which is totally different.
Yeah, and so,
Yes.
certainly there's a lot of nuance in the board goals for discussion.
Right.
And reality is, we're paying for those kind of programs anyway.
Yep.
Sure
So
we
do
are.
we want to pay for them twice?
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I
Are you doing
also-
this part?
I am, yes. So the next thing I'm going to go to is the referendum budget update. And I'll give a preface on this that we don't have any final payment applications yet. And the final payment application, if there was any allowances that are rolling back to us or chargebacks that we're doing, they're not reflected until a final payment application is made. So the only two things we have right now that are substantial is the original contract value and the amount we've paid them to date. And so I've summarized that information for the board up here. We have the specific project, the vendor that performed the work on that project, and then their original contract values, what we have paid those contractors to date, and then just for a point of reference, what the completion percentage is based on that. And so, without going through this with an incredible amount of detail, I'll save you some legwork. Newport and Otto is where all the meat is, right? That's the 32 million. That's where we anticipate any substantial rollbacks, and we do anticipate them there, that we're going to see some allowances come back to us from the Newport contract, less so from Otto. And if you look at the last item, the finish items, so we have a balance in the bank today of 2.17 million. We have not encumbered 2.1, we have not encumbered that full amount. So there was left in there so that we had unforeseen expenses, we could address them. And so that finish items represents sort of the unbudgeted amount left in the capital projects. We expect, another way to say that is, of the 2.17 in the bank, we expect about 1.7 million to be paid out as part of final payment applications and the ongoing part of the project. So conservatively, there appears to be about 400K, but that number is subject to change as we go through the final application process. And I certainly appreciate the board's patience. I know we set the expectation that we'd have some of these final payment applications coming in November. And I would remind everybody that the target completion date for this project was November, mid-November, so we're where we should be in that regard. The township is coming this week to make inspections. With successful inspections, we have a certificate of acceptance, and that is the green light to start getting these final payment applications. So we won't issue any final payment applications until we have the proper documentation from the town. Those inspections are happening, I want to say that the first one is tomorrow.
The numbers that you have here, because I know earlier today I had to ask you particularly about Newport and Paul Auto because there were some hefty payouts there. Is that included in this number?
Yes.
The bills that we're
This
approving
is
tonight?
net as of tonight. So these,
Okay.
so that we go in this, in Otto and Newport, we'll just use those because they're the big ones. You got a couple big numbers there. Those checks are on the bills list. They're here for approval tonight.
Right,
So that bank balance is assuming no outstanding checks.
okay. All right.
And worth noting that there was a couple of things that we were working out with some of the work that was getting done last week when we, I will say, graciously agreed to take that time off and process those applications for their consideration. And total today that when our expectations were met, we would send those checks. So we're gonna sit on those for a couple of days until they're addressed.
Good
Two
for you.
questions.
Thank you.
Is the testing in this? I don't see it.
TTI is in as an environmental cost or a soft cost, so that's, all the environmental.
Some soft costs.
Yeah, the environmental should be a catch-all
Right.
category.
So it's a catch-all? So any of
Yeah.
these that say 100% are 100% or no?
The ones that are 100%, I would say that we have paid to date 100% of their
Okay.
original contract volume. There is a little bit of detail in here, and without making this a 17-tab report and providing that level of detail on it. For instance, you'll notice that Sonatrol is 101,
Right.
right? So they had a change order, it was fairly minimal amount of money. That
Right.
change order is reflecting that. So their original contract value is obviously changed, went up.
Right.
We had some additional cameras that were
Cameras that
installed.
needed, right.
Yeah, so, but I don't anticipate, to answer your question, I don't anticipate any changes in, or any allowances or rollbacks from the numbers that are at 100. I think those
Okay,
are
good.
safe to assume are pretty locked in, that they're pretty much done. The numbers that are less than 100 is where we expect to see our allowances and credits.
So, just for confirmation, because the question has come up, and I remember the discussion on the security cameras, et cetera. All of our security cameras are up and operational, am I correct?
All the ones that are up are operational. We are still installing more cameras. And I'll give you the example is the board recently agreed to do the Wildcat Shack, right?
Correct.
And so we wanted to provide coverage for
For there,
cameras
right.
in the areas where we're gonna
Right.
provide an entrance point and maybe a view that we didn't have before for that use of that spot. And there's a couple areas that as we go through operationally and identify maybe a spot that got missed, we'll
do
put it,
that.
yeah, we'll put something there.
Okay,
And
thank
so we
you.
actually met with
Kyle?
both school, well, not Kyle this week, with the schools, Troy and the technology and the principals to just talk about where they, any other needs so that we can kind of roll that last piece that we need from them into one final request for an invoice.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then the one thing that I have in the ears too, and I know we discussed this, but was there any movement on the December meeting? I know that we had briefly discussed it, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't, we want to stay on that?
Well, it was a discussion, and I don't think I put it in my president's update that we had when we met on the agenda for this month. And my feeling was, and I don't know if this is the feeling of the entire board, but my feeling was that we still have bills coming in. We still have things that have to be done, things that need to be paid attention to. And certainly I would like to keep December's meeting as brief as possible. You know, it's the 18th, it's late, but I do believe we need a meeting. I just feel that we need to stay on task with our responsibilities. So I would shout out for, let's keep it short if possible.
Well, so the backstory
So
on that,
I
guys,
was
was
gonna say,
that.
are you suggesting we change the date though?
No, I was
No, he
suggesting,
was suggesting
I was
that we just
suggesting
not
you
have
have the
one.
option to not have a December meeting for two
Some-
reasons. You have a lame duck board that, in the sense that you have 3 members of the board who can't make any commitments, financial or otherwise, beyond January. And also, there's no statutory requirement to have it. You have the appropriate number of board meetings throughout a year. And certainly, I'm just presenting for the board's consideration.
Well, and I would certainly hope that as we formulate that agenda, that anything, you know, that is gonna have an impact in the future, I mean, okay, we've got bills, we gotta pay them. that those things certainly be held until January when our new members are sworn in. So, yeah, because we are a lame duck board, we don't want to be making major decisions, based on.
We can limit the agenda to reflect.
Is there any
It's
way to
appropriate.
pay bills short of having a meeting?
I mean, I have the statutory authority to cut checks between meetings. As long as we are meeting regularly as required, then,
Some districts, because of the holidays, end
Yeah.
up canceling like December and July, just because July is summer and December, a lot of times there's concerts, events, et cetera, going on.
I'm just looking at the agenda and knowing the agendas that we have every month. I don't see how we skip a month if there's no business.
No, and I felt the
So
same
I would say
way.
if we want to change the date,
Then what is the date?
the
18th,
18th, if that's the
it's late.
concern. But I think we need to have a meeting.
I won't be here, but it doesn't mean you have to change the date. Or if I get here, I'll be a little late, but I know it's not out of the ordinary to take the holiday month off, or the December month off.
But again, it's, how do the rest of you feel? AJ,
Really doesn't matter in terms of done, so.
right? Stephen? Don't say he doesn't matter to you.
Well, this is, in terms of having a meeting or not having a meeting, I'd rather have a meeting. December 18th is not the most advantageous day for me, but my last responsibility, so I'll be here whenever our last meeting is.
Karen, you feel we should. Benny, and you don't really one way or another,
I'm all right with canceling it.
you're okay with canceling. Kim?
I'm okay either way. I mean, I understand that the agenda's huge, but, and it's your last meeting. It's your last meeting, So, I'm really.
pizza
Yes.
party it is.
I'm in.
Just pizza?
Pizza.
Wow, you're serious? That's what I get.
And I'm actually fine with the 18th as well, I'm looking, but, I mean, it's really, I guess I don't have an opinion.
Tommy, you have any preference?
The only thing I could say is so we can get the closeout year stuff done, the bill cycles for that, and get out of here. That shorter the better, but
Won't put anything major on there.
So I'm hearing keep it short
Yeah,
Keep
short
it
and
short,
sweet.
let's
Keep it
just
on the
get
18th.
it done. All right,
And pizza.
and pizza.
and
Check.
I don't get a choice.
And I had a 2-hour board forum. Last meeting.
No,
We're not gonna give you, we're not giving you a microphone.
No, then I'm bringing a gag.
2 minutes. No, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You just changed it.
I am formally requesting though,
He's working
that,
on it.
Yeah.
we don't start until 6 and start a regular meeting at 6:30 and get out of here.
The board's already discussed the new meeting times and advertised those times.
Right,
It's set for the public,
Yeah.
I think it's set for 6.
It's
Six.
5:30, executive 6 is our regular meeting.
yeah, that's been advertised.
Okay.
All right, the only other thing though is if, and of course, Amy, I know that you don't know probably until the last minute whether something gets thrown into your office, that if there is gonna be no executive session, just notify us.
Yeah.
That way Karen's not racing
Please.
down 5:39.
And that way we don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we really,
And I honestly didn't realize there wasn't anything on both ends, so. it
It's
was-
fine,
Yeah.
it's fine, let's just try to
Sure.
prevent that,
Yep, absolutely.
in the future.
I bet.
All right, anything
Sorry.
else under, it's great, number 7. So basically, you were the facilities update.
Yeah, so
I
if you
don't
want
see
a quick
John or
update, I
Brian
did
here.
talk to John earlier about that, so they, and he had asked me to give a quick update on it. So we're continuing to work through the punch list, but it's substantially complete enough that we're gonna have inspections tomorrow. So I think, to say it's 99% done, the type of stuff that's left is a light pole behind the high school that needs to be erected and some cabling and channeling that needs to be installed. It's really light stuff that won't impact the COA, the certificate of acceptance.
Right,
But they're minor maintenance issues that we pay
have to
for.
be taken care of, okay.
So I think if we get to the point of having the COA, then we're.
Nick, if you remember and if you have time, tomorrow's Thursday, could you just shoot me an email and let me know how the inspections went?
Mhm, Absolutely.
That way I will put it in my update.
And with that,
Absolutely.
Nick, are we doing all right with the state fire inspectors?
We are.
Good.
We are. We met with them a few weeks ago. We outlined They outlined a number of their expectations. We've completed the things that they've asked for, which were just some confirmations of the fire rating of doors and windows in the atrium, the labeling of dampers in the HVAC system that, for fire purposes. It's some minor issues like that for them, and they agreed that they might have some flexibility with those other outstanding funds for them if we complete these things. So, we'll engage
That
with
would
them.
be nice,
Yeah.
right.
That would be greatly appreciated if we could do something, because there is still large fines outstanding.
We discussed it with them. It'll be
Good.
addressed as part of this.
Good,
Good.
thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
No problem.
So is it yes or no?
What, yes, what?
December.
We're gonna have a
Yes.
Wow.
pizza.
5:36.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to number 8, presentations. Student representatives, do we have any, they're not here tonight, Troy?
Well, student, no, well, I'm student and PTSO, I'm kind of.
Well, then you can just do
Can I
both,
just do
Michelle.
both? Okay, all right. I apologize for not being here the last couple of months, it's been a little crazy on our end. Okay, as far as junior high goes, some of the announcements that someone came up with was Elizabeth Makar will begin her senior year of track as a school record holder in shot put. 40 feet and 9 3/4 inches. She's ranked 9th in the state,
Wow.
which is awesome. So congratulations to her. She also holds the school record for spring for 114 feet and 9 inches. Hope I'm reading that right. And she is the state Group 2 championship tournament last spring and placed 4th. What'd you say?
100 feet would be for discus, not
Oh.
shot. I just wanted.
Okay, I'm just reading it, so I just said. All right,
Nobody's
so.
throwing a shot with that.
Sorry, okay. As far as our TAILS program, our therapy, animals, and learning spaces, that's going well. We currently have 2 dogs, obviously one here at the junior high and one at the high school. I also have Amanda Miller who comes in and she volunteers her time, and I kind of get to piecemeal her out to different places that want her to be there. I have probably about 6 or 7 teachers between Little Lake Harbor as well as our district who have reached out to me who have puppies and they're in training. So next year will be a very, very busy year for me as far as organizing all of that. But it's going well and people are very excited about it, and so that's that. So as far as the Wildcat Shack is opening up this Friday at 3 o'clock here at the junior high, and that's kind of student council stuff. We had our first fundraiser this year so far, and that went well. And we're in 78 buildings, so we are kind of encompassing our 7th graders as we go. Now, as far as PTSO goes, we had our Fire Pit Friday on November 1st. It was pretty good. It was a great success. We would like to thank the West Tuckerton Fire Company, as well as the staff and the custodians for helping out organizing that. It was a fun event, and I think it was right after Halloween, so there was some lingering there, but I do think it's something that we'll definitely look into to do for a lot of events for next year for the fall. Thanks. Okay. Our holiday house tour is coming up, so I do have some things for you for that. If you know of anyone who is interested in donating anything, gifts, cards, and giving a shout out to their business and want to help out the house tour, let me know. Our hoagie sales will be beginning November 25th. We'll be starting to put out information for people who want to do that. That was a great success last year, so we're going to continue with that. And I think that's about it for student council PTSO stuff. Anything else?
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Students of the month, Mr. Shore.
Good evening, Dr. McCooley, members of the board. It is once again my pleasure this month on behalf of our staff here at the junior high school to present our 7th and 8th grade students of the month. First up, our 7th grader. It is my pleasure to bring up Morgan Tarbrasso. Morgan, come on up, buddy. So this was written by Miss Luna, and here's what she had. Oh boy. So it's good, I actually pre-read it, so she says a lot of great things about you. So here's what Ms. Luna has to say about Morgan. Morgan shows great responsibility in all aspects. He shows responsibility in his academics because he is proactive and takes the initiative to advance himself as a student. For example, Morgan requests to attend lunch and learn at least 3 days a week to ensure that he completes his work since he knows he has extracurricular activities after school. Morgan is also responsible when it comes to showing ownership and respect. He takes pride in caring for his belongings and classroom materials. He helps around the classroom and goes above and beyond to ensure the classroom materials are in order. Morgan is also responsible for his actions and for his relationships. He treats others with respect and kindness and goes the extra mile to help others in the classroom. His responsibility truly shows his maturity and character and is without a doubt one of Pineland's finest. On behalf of Ms. Luna, congratulations, Morgan. Morgan Terbrasso, our 7th grade student of the month. That's for you. That's also for you. Don't go away yet. And also a little gift for you. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Proud of you, buddy. Our 8th grade student of the month is Aaron Gleason, and prior to me just coming down, Aaron's mom emailed me. Unfortunately, she's under the weather, so they will not be able to be here this evening, but we will make sure that Aaron gets her stuff tomorrow, so congratulations to Aaron, and congratulations to all our students of the month, and it's great to see some of the high schoolers back, a lot of familiar faces, so congratulations, and can see their continuing their success over across the street. And with that kind of lead-in, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Henderson.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
By the way, it's not a coincidence that Morgan went through the Frontline School. Just right. First up, 9th grade, we have Nikki Conrad. Nikki, are you here? I'll give her a round of applause. Real good. Nikki's teacher wrote, Nikki's an extremely motivated student and is always the first to help others in the classroom when they are struggling. Nikki takes great pride in her work and always tries her best. She is a pleasure to have in class, so good job, Nikki. Next up in 10th grade, Corey Conway. Come on up, Corey. Congratulations. Hang here for a second. So Corey's teacher's right. Corey's an outstanding student, first and foremost. He's an important member of our football team. Corey takes all of his work seriously and goes above and beyond what the assignments call for. An absolute pleasure to have in class, a true leader. Great job. Marley Tharp. Come on up, Marley. Congratulations. Marley's teacher's right. Marley always comes to class with a smile and is ready to work on any project. She always participates and does excellent work. She's friendly to all the other students and will help them if they're having difficulty with something. She's just a great example of a student of the month. So, congratulations. And lastly, we have Madison Seisel. Congratulations. Madison is a natural leader. She's a hard worker and is always first to lend a hand to others. Madison does a great job assisting and mentoring students who need extra help, and she's an absolute amazing student. Congratulations, Madison. By the way, boys and girls, you have a certificate from for something for lunch. You got a free lunch or something in the back. Enjoy.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Now we have Dr. Clark and Dr. McCooley on our LGBTQ pilot.
I'll go off and support.
No.
I'll do it.
It's easier for this one.
Leave it out.
All right, thank you. This is an overview of our offering for the LGBTQ pilot program. And I do want to thank Kim Clark, who I consider an expert in this field, and she did help not only with our interest in this, but helped to put together the presentation and helped me with a lot of the information. So I'm going to go over these slides briefly. Kim is going to jump in if she feels the need, but she's also going to be here for questions, which I think is the more important piece because she does have an extensive background in this field. So this is going to be put into place for all school districts come September of 2020. As you can see by this slide that with a lot of information on it, this is going to be required by the governor to be implemented in all school districts for junior and high schools. And it's going to include instruction on the political, economic, and social contributions of persons with disabilities and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. So I tried to highlight the key points in this slide. The next few slides are going to be data from a national survey that was conducted by a group called GLSEN. I did look it up to try to see what it stood for. I'm sure Kim knows. I do not. I tried to find it and couldn't come up with that information. But the information that I'm going to be giving you in the next few slides is the results of the survey that they conducted in high schools. So they did look to find the experiences of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth in our nation, and they also looked at what resources were available to those students. Here are some of the statistics. 34.8% of these students missed at least one day of school because of some issues of feeling unsafe. I apologize, the statistic is cut off because of the format of the presentation. Hang on one second, I want to make sure I get you the right information, and that's why I always have a backup copy here. 70% experience some type of verbal harassment. Some of the students consider dropping out of high school, 42% of them. And lastly, I put this in bold because I feel it's as applicable to our school district. Many of these students in rural and small towns face more of a hostile climate because of the environment. Here are some more of the key findings. Once again, this is very wordy. I tried to highlight some of it. Often these students do not report this to staff because they feel that they're not going to get anywhere or the ramifications. They often feel that reporting it to staff makes it worse for them. And they also feel that when reporting it, only 25% actually got some type of assistance. And lastly, they feel that they're being told just to ignore it or to change their behavior. And that's not acceptable. All students should be able to go to their staff for assistance with any type of issues they're having. Students that had a LGBTQ inclusive curriculum feel more safe at school because of that curriculum. This slide represents how they have changed their perception of school based on having an inclusive curriculum. And you can see by the bottom portion that a lot of the negative words or slurs were diminished, and that is the bar on the right, just because they're having an inclusive curriculum and students and staff are more accepting. Our data, when I talked to Kim about this, she did a wonderful job last year, but this is really what we're doing for our students. This is all that we're doing for our students. But she did have a great turnout. Kim held a club last year.
We have the club last year was run by Sherry Sachs, one of our teachers. This year at the junior high, it's run by Christina Colella, who is here tonight. And at the high school, it's Generation Equality. It's run by Sherry Sachs at the high school this year.
Great. And this shows the number of students that attended that. They had it one or twice a month, and they had up to 30 students at those meetings. So there is definitely an interest and a need. So a little bit more about the pilot now. The pilot is being run through an organization called Garden State Equality. You can see that that was established in 2004, and they are an advocacy group for our LGBTQ students.
Can I add something?
Sure, absolutely.
Garden State Equality is also doing this in conjunction with a group called Make It Better for Youth. And that is a group that was founded by educators in the state of New Jersey. So the pilot, although Garden State of Quality is providing, they're the business end, so they're providing more of the funding and the marketing, Make It Better for Youth, those are the educators who have created the curriculum for the pilot program and who will be working with us. So they are state certified teachers who are currently teaching in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you. So this is their mission, and it is lengthy, so I did highlight some of the areas. They are here to prepare school districts properly to have an inclusive curriculum. It is not a separate curriculum. It's taking what we currently teach and making sure that we're representing all groups. We are building a strong foundation with this. It also helps us to adopt any type of instructional materials that may be missing. So if we're teaching a specific time period or genre and we're missing materials that may be inclusive of all types of students, they would help us to find those materials. It helps us to appreciate the significant contributions that all types of groups made. And it is teaching our students to be good citizens and respect all types of students. Lastly, it's helping the parents and community members understand and be accepting of all types of groups. Once again, very lengthy slide. I actually took a screenshot of this right from the pilot program that they had sent us some information. But on the right, you can see I highlighted some of the key points of this. These are just some of the benefits, and I will send this PowerPoint out to the board, but you're getting assistance from trained professionals. As Kim said, this group has been around for quite some time. These are certified teachers. They have experience in this area, and we will be getting assistance from them as we implement this into the 8th grade. We get a curriculum coach that is going to come down and work with our staff as they implement different types of lessons and materials. There are information sessions for parents if they may have any questions or concerns. We get to be a part of educational history by being selected as a pilot district in New Jersey. And lastly, we get to earn a certification as a safe school, and SAFE stands for Safe, Affirming, Fair, and Equitable. Anything else, Kim, that you think I'm missing?
One thing that I want to add to this is that as being a part of the pilot program, they are also looking for feedback from us. So these groups have put this together, and it's not here you're doing this, and it's scripted lessons and we're expected to do it. As part of a pilot, we are then able to give them feedback and say, we're not doing this lesson because we don't think it's appropriate, or we are going to change this to contextualize it for our area. So it allows us to now have a voice in this legislation that was already passed. So rather than just being bystanders and saying we have to do this and we're going to take it for face value, we now have a voice in this conversation to say we agree with this, we don't agree with this, we think that this needs to be changed based on the responses we're getting from our community or from our students or from our teachers. So this gives us voice, which I think is an important piece to that as well.
And this is the last slide, and Kim did already touch on some of these points, so I'll go through this briefly. But to reiterate, these are not new standards. This is just making sure that we are including all types of groups in the curriculum that we teach. The example that comes to my mind, although it's very primary, is if you think of a Dick and Jane book, it represents one type of group and person. And now we're going to be teaching lessons that represents all types of people throughout history. The goal is to make our curriculum inclusive. We are going to be incorporating this into all subjects. There are some states that are doing this primarily in social studies, but in New Jersey this is going to be incorporated in all subjects. So we will be sending, within the 8th grade, teachers from all subject areas, including specials. These are not scripted lessons, they're talking points. We're very pleased that over 40 school districts applied and we were selected as one. And once again, this will only be the 8th grade for this time period, and this is the second half of the school year. It's January through June. There are 2 trainings that we will be going to initially. The first is December 3rd, and we are able to have a board member attend. So initially we did not think we were. Kim was told a couple of days ago that we were, and we're very excited about that. So we encourage a board member or board members, if you'd like to attend December 3rd, you are more than welcome to come. And as Kim said, we are not restricted to teaching X amount of lessons, or we're not going to be fed something. We are going to be giving the feedback, and we're going to be able to teach as few or as many lessons as we'd like to as part of that pilot. We will be surveyed, we will be giving feedback, and we will be a part of the process from start to finish. So we are very excited about this, and we're hoping to get the board's support tonight on this. There is a time on our agenda tonight for discussion on this. So if you want to ask a question now, you're welcome to, or if you want to wait until we have that time for the board, Kim is still going to be here for questions.
So again, you said lessons, but it's not actually lessons, it's kind of like inclusive key points, correct? Yes.
Right. The lessons are based on our current standards,
Right.
and then we're including now all types of groups within those lessons.
It almost seems like it's kind of allowing them into history, basically.
Exactly.
Where like women were not allowed in history 75 years ago. I mean, Martha Washington was like it. We had to sort of go back and rewrite history. So it's kind of like including them suddenly. Is that sort of how you look at it?
It's changing, it's adding that perspective and looking at, so we're gonna find out all of the information about exactly what they proposed December 3rd, but what was explained to me was that it's just adding that perspective into the conversation. So we're not teaching about LGBTQ, it's when we're having a conversation about, or when we're looking at our materials in an English class, making sure that all groups are represented in, text offerings for students to choose to read. Or when we're having a conversation about propaganda and who target audiences, maybe instead of just talking about, A, B, C, and D, we're also going to include maybe the heterosexual piece, that it's also targeting that. So it's not adding lessons, it's only enhancing and adding a different perspective from it. So it's really nothing new that we're, really not something different than what we're already doing, it's just adding a perspective in.
Thank you.
And like I said, we'll have a discussion piece on our agenda tonight.
All right, moving on to our work session under board forum, board training. I did reach out to Marianne Friedman. I think I had told you in one of my updates that as part of the responsibilities coming up, that I felt that the best training for January, when you have a new board, at least 3 new members, that you have a team building portion and a communication portion to clearly outline the communication between the board members and between the board and Dr. McCooley and Dr. McCooley and the board. What are your expectations? What parameters are you going to set, etc. Marianne has given me 2 dates. I have not sent them out to you because I'm waiting for, it's not my decision. It's really up to the people who will be sitting on the board. So although Marianne's time is limited in January, perhaps my suggestion would be that you take care of that at reorg and kind of come up with a date that works for all the new members. Are we good with that?
So you're saying put it on the agenda to talk about, basically?
For January at your reorg.
But she had 2 dates available. So it's
Yes.
not like we have a whole lot of options.
Well, you don't have a whole lot of
Right,
options.
and if we wait until January, there's a very good chance that we may not have any options.
Well,
So
But
since
do
the
we need
majority
Mary
of
Ann?
the board will.
Why do we need Mary Ann?
I do agree with Kim. I don't necessarily know if we need Marianne. We have an ethics training every year. We can always schedule that with her at some point. And I agree with Sue that the purpose of that is really to talk about communication, parameters, the format of the board. So if the dates that she has work for everyone at reorg, great. If not, we can work around that.
Is she holding the dates for you?
as of now, yes. And I would have to go back and look. For some reason, it's hitting me as like
No.
the 8th of January, the 25th of January. I can't remember the dates. I just don't feel that I should be involved in that decision, so. If you want to wait till January,
Yeah, we'll wait on
is that good? All right.
I think it's only right, we have 3 new members to wait till they get here and see what works for them as
And
well.
what we
I would
need?
appreciate more than 4 days notice if we're talking January. The reorg's gonna be the 4th or the 5th. I need.
I think it's gonna be Monday or Tuesday, I think, because the statutorily, it's gotta be by the 7th.
Yeah.
I think we come back the 5th, right?
Yeah,
Or
so
or
we're
the
talking
6th.
2 days notice we're gonna give people, the first date's out.
No, then we just want to pick that one, right, Karen? But we can't.
So Marion doesn't need to hold it, is my
Right,
point.
absolutely. I agree.
All right, number 2, board responsibilities. Again, I think that's something that would be discussed at your reorg meeting. I don't think anything else until you get through this
On your
list is
chart,
mine
you're
until
good.
we hit new business.
Got it.
Old business, I have something too.
Okay. Technology plan, Melissa, did you want to add anything to that?
No, the only thing is, once again, once we have that audit done of the infrastructure, we're gonna build a plan based on that. So we're going to see what it's gonna cost to upgrade the infrastructure, how can we fix it, and the plan will start to get developed around January. So we'll have that done, including costs and everything.
I have some insight into what the issues are, right? We
So
had
the-
some infrastructure upgrade as part of the referendum.
We had
was-
infrastructure within the school, so like
Yeah.
access points and things like that. This is actually the lines that go underneath the ground. So that line that is feeding fiber from one school to the next has some issues, some connection issues with it. But that's a line that's existed since
20 years.
20 years, yes.
So that it was built with the expectation that it would handle all the future's data needs and would become a much more data-intensive consumer.
20 years
And
ago.
so, yeah, and so,
Yeah.
to your point though, it would fit with capital projects priorities because there was money that was earmarked for technology and we're well under that technology earmark in that budget. And so this will be something that's looked at as part of that.
When are we going to know the possible cost of this?
By the next board meeting.
You know, 'cause that's one thing that would have to be weighed into it, to have an audit, what the cost of an audit would be. And, you know, would that really require an audit to know what we need to do to upgrade when it sounds like you already know that we need to upgrade the system?
Right, so the record, I think that would also include a scope of work on what changes need to be made. So I think certainly we can all agree that it's 20-year-old infrastructure that needs updated, but updated with what, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of
What's the
fiber
cost?
and so I would
So
say
we really
that.
need the expert in here to
Right.
say, okay, this is what you've got, but this is what you need, and this is what kind of what you need. Is that?
I think that's a fair way.
Yeah, you can call it an audit or an estimate. We need someone to come in and say, this is broke, this is how much it's gonna cost, and it'll correspond with everything you already have, or it won't.
Okay, but, so you're saying that January's meeting or December's?
January, we'll have the plan ready.
Okay.
But before that, like Nick said, we'll have prices and things like
I
that.
wanted to have three bids on it.
Yes.
It's gonna be a number over the quote threshold,
Yes.
right? So
Right.
I wanted to get multiple price points on it. I actually was hoping we'd have the second one today. They were unable to provide it, but we'll have it for the next meeting. It'll be for the board's discussion at the next meeting.
So good thing we have it in December.
Yeah, let me ask Amy this, if that comes up, the vote to do, the audit, we have the bids, et cetera. Do the three of us who are not gonna be on the board, do we abstain, or do we vote, or does it have to be 6 people that are here who say yes, and it doesn't really matter what the three of us say?
So if you're voting to start it at that time,
Right,
then it's still under your organization, so you're allowed to go ahead and do that.
okay, all right. All right, we also had discussion on policy 2431, which is our athletic competition policy. So, I think when you and I spoke, Mr. Kubricki, this was more about maintenance of the fields. Am I correct on
No,
this?
it
or-
wasn't.
Oh,
I wanted our Amy to clarify the third from the bottom paragraph of the policy and the last paragraph. Sometimes when I interpret things, you guys let me know I interpret things wrong, so before I give you my interpretation, I want to see what Amy's is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
third
just
from
so
the-
I'm clear which one we're talking about, the one that starts with the superintendent? Or
That's the
one that
last
starts
paragraph,
with-
yes, and then two before that where it says the board shall approve. So there's two, which deals with the facility, but that wasn't my,
To
So,
So I'm sorry,
I'm
where?
just,
Time to review
no,
that.
I'm just trying to
Another
look,
item.
I'm just trying to look to make sure, so, because the way it's on my page, it's broken up a little bit, so the third paragraph from the bottom, interscholastic standards?
Yes, which is
Okay.
your title for it, but that's okay.
Okay, and then the other one you want me to look at is what?
The last paragraph.
The
right,
superintendent,
Which I
okay.
think are tied together somehow, but,
Okay. Okay, so typically, and again, this is just generally talking, the board authorizes the athletic programs you approve them, you approve the coaches, and we approve the schedules to the extent known, with the asterisk that things can change, things can come up, games can change, games can come up, and it's presented to the board. And it says the superintendent, but that means the superintendent's designee typically. So Melissa as superintendent, Dr. McCooley as superintendent would have her designee, which would be the athletic director, prepare that, provide all that information, and present it to the board, which you typically approve. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I guess that's where the interpretation comes in.
Okay.
When it says the board shall approve annually, and maybe I'm being too specific, for me, annually means once a year.
No, annually is
Seasons.
one time a year, but not one time a year.
Okay.
So I don't think you have to do every single athletic program in September. I think annually you have to make sure you're approving your programs.
See, we have other policies that deal with the coaches, and we have, that's also by our contract with our teachers in terms of when we have to appoint those coaches. I did not see this policy as relating to the coaches being appointed. I saw this policy as presenting a program of athletics by the superintendent or her designee that we would approve. Since I've been on the board for 3 years, we've never sat down and said, okay, what programs are we going to be offering in our athletic program? You know, what are the cost benefits analysis of those programs? We never had a discussion in terms of what our athletic program offering should be, and I thought this policy indicated we should, but again.
So to me, and I now understand where you're coming from, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were going to talk about this specific issue, so I apologize, I would have been more prepared. But when you read that last paragraph, it talks about the superintendent shall annually prepare, approve, and present to the board for its consideration. So to me, that means Dr. McCooley is doing all that legwork, looking at the needs of the students, the needs of the district, what programs are successful, what programs are not successful, presenting it to the board to approve, and then you guys are then either asking questions or agreeing or disagreeing. Or you might have a need to say, hey, we need this sport at our school. Let's see, how can we do it? You bring it to Dr. McCooley. Again, she would do the legwork behind, can we do it? Can we afford it? Is it something that the students have an interest in? And then again, she'd officially approve it, present it to the board for approval. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does, and I don't think we've ever done that. I mean, we've approved coaches and we've approved games and things, but we've never talked about the general program athletics. Why does Barnegat have this program? Why don't we? Why do we have this program when there's only a limited number of students in it and something might serve things better? Why don't we have athletic academies that are not competitive? I mean, so we've never had a discussion since I've been here on the scope of the athletic program. And, you know, I thought this policy kind of suggested we should have something in that area.
So I would say to you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just add to that I think we had at some level had a discussion because it generated, a little over a year ago, we had the questionnaire.
Yes.
Right? The board said, you know, let's survey the interest. Are there other sports? I know lacrosse has frequently come up, you know, men's volleyball. And
That's where we
that was the
started.
reason why we
We
started
started.
with boys
Right.
volleyball.
Right.
But I don't know that we ever got like, we know that the survey happened. I don't know that we ever got an overview of what the results were. Right? I don't remember Will ever coming and presenting the findings of that. This is where I think,
And
you
the
know, there
survey
is
was
more interest. This
student-driven.
is where there's less interest.
And there is more to the athletic program than the student interest, because that comes and goes. There is the community, there are the parents, there are certain things which offer the community pride, and this is just more than a student. What would you like to see offered? Because that's going to change. What would be good to be offered is different than what you would like to see offered.
And I think, you know, to answer that question though, I think part of the problem is if the community would like to see X program, but none of the students want to participate in X program, then I think you have a concern, because why develop something that the students don't have any interest in? I think what you're thinking about and what maybe I'm saying the board is doing is when you go ahead and approve your schedule for volleyball or your schedule for soccer and you're approving your coach for those teams, you are saying as a board, we're doing those programs. So if we all of a sudden said, and I'm not saying we're saying this, but say we said, we're not doing volleyball anymore, and so we're not going to, so therefore we wouldn't appoint a volleyball coach. And that would be the way you would either approve a program or disapprove a program. if that makes sense.
It does.
You're authorizing the approval of the program by having it on an agenda based on the recommendation of the superintendent, based on interest in the district, and the board is then approving it.
It does to some extent, but it's interesting you mentioned that because on today's agenda, we're approving athletic schedules for the winter, including practices and game schedules. On that schedule, there's nothing about any scheduling for winter track, but yet at the same time tonight, we're approving athletic coaches for winter track.
So my assumption would be at some point you're going to get the winter track schedule that we would be approving at a later date, because I know this board particularly is very adamant, you need to have the schedules on there, the information on there to approve. So annually to me is one time, but it doesn't have to be, we're all doing it today.
And I do know that there's been times where there's been audits done where there wasn't enough participation, and the superintendent would come to us, and that particular group would be canceled.
Right.
You know, based
I think that's why
on
we usually approve it pending
pending,
student participation.
yeah.
But we
adequate
also have
participation.
sports, we are now offering where the participation level is extremely low. I'm not saying we shouldn't offer them, I should.
Right.
And when we, when there are county championships and shore conference championships, we don't even have enough athletes to compete in those. So is there an advantage to continuing that program? And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I mean, we just never had a general discussion about the
isn't that
nature of athletics here.
Generally also a budget, conversation.
A budget conversation.
It is a budget, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've had that in the past, but that's one that you should sit there. Can we afford, I mean, it's a student athlete, athletic activities are great and are very beneficial to students. We look to see as many as we can for students, but we have to look at first as the educational component. So, I don't know if they've had direct conversations, but maybe, you've had, part of them saying, hey, we've got to have, here's our goals here, make sure they're aligned, and the extra stuff we're going to do for the extracurricular things. So I don't know what you've had in the past, just maybe you had it, but not as directed, maybe.
Last
you would
year
have
in the
liked.
budget committee, we had discussion about the athletics budget. We discussed each department budget in a 3-year trend. And so inside the athletics budget discussion, if I recall it correctly, was some discussion of, all right, guys, this is the number traditionally. I don't know this. Let's say it's $500,000. And, if we're gonna, if we need this, this is a spot that we could make some cuts to get to a number if we need to. How do we get there through the athletics department? I remember we talked about whether it was possible to eliminate some sub-varsity sports or some of the games in that structure. And we've been fortunate to be able to, because I think you made the point very well, they're a point of community pride. And so it's not just as simple as saving the money, in those.
And we've never even had a discussion about not having a marching band. I know it's not athletics, but we are the only school, name another school that doesn't have a marching band. I mean, we never had a discussion about.
But we did, because we had the interest survey, and like Amy was saying, there wasn't an interest in it.
But I mean, we as a board didn't have.
But
a
if we
discussion.
say let's have a march, if the board decides to have a marching band and then no students are participating, what's the point in having it?
It would.
But I think we did have
So-
that discussion when we did the survey. You know what I mean, Stephen?
But I think
We
you
did
can
the
always
survey
bring
as
it
to
up, like
where
if you
they're-
had a
I
sport
think for
that
the
you
next
liked.
board, at some point, there should be a meeting scheduled for just a discussion of the nature of the athletic offerings we have in here and, and community ideas that they can talk about that and be aware of what's being offered, what's not being offered. Just.
One way to go
What
that
are
is,
the goals?
this board likes to do a board of the whole. A lot of things, we have the one committee. Do you do then committees? Do you do a program committee where you're looking at athletics activities? That there's another subgroup, and that is your focus, and then you're reporting back. And so on, that might be another avenue to look at for the board going forward. That you have these smaller groups that their attention is there, your passion is there, and you're taking your energy there, taking the reports, and then bringing it back to the board of the whole. Maybe that's something to look for the future as you guys organize.
Well, I think as part of the reorg meeting in January, we discussed the establishment of committees.
Committees or board of the whole.
Or board of the
Right.
whole. And so I think, and even in tying into number 6 on this, that'll be a part of the reorg discussion, whether the board in January wants to have individual committees, to Mr. Barchetta's point, that address program offerings, or to remain as a board of the whole. And then as a board of a whole, maybe there's some discussion about
Subcommittees.
Right.
having some kind of broader discussion specifically about athletics.
And that was
Or
item
programs, not
number
just athletics.
6, right?
6 on here, because we had talked about all the policies that were on here and we took them off, except for the mandated policies. Because policy is the domain of this board. I mean, that is our major job. And so it will be moving forward. We used to have a policy committee that did a great deal of work, but of course we were 64 policies missing, and a lot of regulations that were missing. And it seemed that the committee worked because minutes were given to the rest of the board members, they could peruse the minutes, what was discussed, what the committee felt, and there never seemed to be an issue then with those policies. But again, that's gonna be up to you guys moving forward in January, whether you feel that you need a policy committee. It was one of the only standing committees we had. We had that and we had budget, and then negotiations, of course, when it was necessary. So again, it's a decision that you need to make in January, along with maybe the suggestion that AJ made, but that could also be done through another forum. You know,
Yep.
And then I would just throw out, AJ, probably 2 years ago now, the budget committee did look at how much we're spending on athletics and how much of a percent of the budget was. And we compared that to other similar districts. So there's a I don't know if they still call it the state report card. That's out there, that's updated annually. That's one of the kind of benchmarks you can compare against different districts. And our percentage was actually, I think it was just a tick lower than the average. So cost-wise, it seems like we were reasonable.
I would think too that administratively, some of these things are happening because there are new sports introduced and new programs and things and other things taken away. So I would think, I would hope, and I'm pretty sure that administratively those things are going on. Those discussions are being had with coaches and students and et cetera to make sure that we're offering things that students want to do.
I think your point is just it's never been,
Just never
The board has not
discussed
been
our own
informed of
ideas
that.
as the board, as representatives of the community which were elected. We never just have discussed the state of the athletic program and our views and our ideas.
Yeah, I guess to Amy's point, our input is approving it, discussing it, voting on it.
We hope that it would well up from the kids. So Southern has, what, 35 sports? I mean, they have the most they can have.
Maybe
But like the
school.
equestrian that we approved when Debbie's kid was here.
right.
You know, that came from the students. So you hope that it comes from the students. I mean, if you have your own ideas, you can always present it too, but I think that that's sort of the idea too. Of course, we have to look at funding, but Southern has the funding, so they can do 35.
I think where we need to go with this right now is, yes, it needs to be certainly a part of the budget, and then it has to be turned over to the reorg once, you know, the new board is seated, and you've got to decide, you know, what you want to do moving forward with this. All right, we have one left, which is our LGBTQ pilot opportunity. Do we have questions? Dr. McCooley and Dr. Clark gave their presentation, so if you have questions, now would be the time to ask them.
so I'm curious about, I think I saw somewhere on one of the slides, was it 40
Yes, 40.
applied?
Yes.
Any thoughts on why there weren't more interest? Right, there's 640 some districts in the state.
We're down to 50. We're down to 592.
I don't know, the only thing I
Well,
could say is the
elementary
only,
districts wouldn't
Elementary.
express
Yeah, it would
interest
be
to K through 6,
middle
so
and high
that's
school.
300 of them.
and really Karen, my only criticism of the organization is their rollout of it. I don't feel like it was extremely efficient. The only notice that we received was an email, and I forwarded it to Kim. So if I didn't, some superintendents, when they get mass emails, you kind of just ignore them because you get so many. So I read through it and thought it was interesting and sent it to Kim. So I'm thinking maybe it just was the way that they advertised it.
I want to thank Kim for the distinction between Garden State and the other group, because as I was reading the information that I could find, I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is an advocacy group. Where's the education part come in here? So I appreciated the clarification on that. Also, I appreciate the clarification that this isn't a curriculum that we're necessarily have to use when our teachers, you know, should this pass, when our teachers are finished with this training, that it's gonna be up to our staff to take what they need and to leave what they wanna leave. Is that, am I reading this right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have the flexibility, and that is part of being in the pilot, is they've prepared this, but, you know, how is it going to roll out? And what are we comfortable with, what are we not? So they're also collecting data from us about, you know,
Right.
what they've prepared.
Right.
So
Okay.
we can use as much or as little as we're interested in, and
Okay.
they leave it up to each individual school district to make it work for their area.
And do we know at this point, I know that the state, Department of Education was going to roll out their broad guidelines. Have they been, has the State Department of Education done that? These broad guidelines that they were supposed to set?
They're working with this organization, and all they're telling us now is come September, we need to do this.
They have nothing in place currently, and if this is something that they are putting on all of our communities, they need to be at the forefront in how this is going to occur, the curriculum and the topics that need to be touched on. This pilot opportunity by this type of group is leaving this Board of Education, this entire school district, and every staff member really hanging out there because they are to be held harmless. So anything that would or could or occurs, we need to understand and have a clear understanding that it all falls on us.
Well-
And this bill, it is my understanding that there may be some repeals in this bill. So, I mean,
I have not.
I
haven't read
heard
anything
about
on that
yet,
either.
but-
No, I haven't heard
well,
that.
So if all schools, it's mandated for all middle school, high schools next year, is the same training that we're gonna be able to avail ourselves of now, will that be available in September? Or will we have a better opportunity now to access the training?
I think now it's better because we're part of the process. Plus, we do have that coach that's going to be coming down for free and working with our 8th grade teachers. Regardless of whether we participate in this or not, come September, we have to prove that in middle school and high school, we have an inclusive curriculum. Once again, we're not changing our standards. We're not changing what we teach day to day. But whatever we teach has to be representative of the real world. And that's the difference between what we're currently teaching and what they're expecting us to teach. It's not a new curriculum, it's just changing the way that we're doing things.
My point is that I feel the training opportunities are greater now
Exactly.
than they're gonna be in September.
So it's giving us a leg up.
And having that voice.
Exactly.
And
So,
we get to have a
Having a
board member
voice.
participate in the training with us, which I think is great.
so I agree, I think it would be a good opportunity for our staff to participate in training. I am, honestly, a bit uncomfortable with an advocacy group that is pushing an agenda influencing our curriculum.
That's
And
why I
that's
was
my
glad
disappointment.
that it was really what Kim said about the other group, Equity for Our Youth, is it?
Make it better for.
Make it better for our youth, because they are an educational group with teachers, and they're more the educational side. That kind of, because I had kind of the same feeling, like, wait, we were getting an advocacy group, where's the education portion of this? And so I think that kind of, for me at least, balanced some of that.
And the advocacy group, Karen, isn't really advocating for us to teach a certain way. They advocate for the rights of all students. So in advocating for the rights of, right, they're advocating for the rights to make sure that, you know, there's tolerance and everyone's accepted.
Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of research since this came out in our board packet last week, and I thank Dr. McCooley for getting the packet to us over the weekend that laid out the plan. I originally had reservations, but I think, and I appreciate Tom's comment in that they're not going to be held liable should anything go wrong. Mike, we're definitely, this is a state mandate, so it has to be implemented. So my thought was, what's the best way to implement it? Initially, I didn't think this was a good idea. I've changed my opinion. I've changed my opinion because of certain things. This is going to be piloted only in the 8th grade. 2, we have very professional teachers and staff who are going to take the things that will work for our district, talk about them, meet, and incorporate them into the curriculum. So this won't be, my initial thought was they're going to come in and they were going to test this curriculum and run it in the classrooms and see what worked and didn't. But that's not going to be the case. They're not going to test the curriculum. We're going to choose what's going to be in the curriculum and not. I originally expressed my concern from Melissa that we should have someone on the board to ask representatives of the community to make sure the community's interests are being met to participate in this. Originally she said we couldn't, but now we find out that we could. So I think that gives us as a board a way to, again, ensure that what is being provided for our students meets with our communities, the nature of our community, to increase tolerance. So that concern is taken care of. And as a board member, I would like to go to the December 3rd meeting, even though I'm on my way out. But I still represent this community, and if I approve this thing, I want to make sure that, that it's, that the community has a say in this representation. So I would like to go to that meeting, and if anybody wants to give me a ride, I would like to so I don't have to drive myself. The other thing which is good.
How long is this trip?
The other thing which is good, which again, even though we can't hold them liable and sue them in case something goes wrong, the MUA says we can withdraw from this at any time, which is a very strong point. Because if we go to this and there's something that is so egregious to our students in the community, we could say, we thank you for participating in this, but we no longer feel it's something that suits us. So I think we're covering our bases, and at the same time, it allows a lot of advantages in terms of our staff it's going to provide our staff with a lot of resources that they can utilize. And so I think, I think when you look at it in its entirety, while there are concerns and while there might be things that might go wrong, I think we're in a position where we can deal with that effectively. So I've changed my mind, and I'm going to support that tonight.
And I
Thank you,
agree, I
Stephen.
think it's proactive to make sure you have a voice at the table and not just be waiting in the wings to see what happens. And I think that's important.
And the state has, I read also, the state has already had a meeting for guidelines. They're going to have a second one. But that doesn't prohibit us from taking what we get from this pilot program and then taking what the state gives us and having our teachers take the best of both.
If this is something we're looking to implement in January, when will the change in curriculum and the curriculum that's going to be being used?
Doesn't get implemented until, the pilot program is through January through June.
Yes.
Okay.
The curriculum doesn't get implemented until
Well,
September.
what curriculum are we going to be utilizing in this pilot program that needs to be approved by the board?
Kim,
We would be, so it's not a new curriculum. We are using the same standards and the same lessons, the same topics, the same content that's already been approved. It's adding another level to the lessons that are already happening in the classroom. So we would be implementing the inclusive curriculum starting in January through June, providing feedback to them for any lessons that we choose to incorporate during that time. But it's nothing, and that was the piece that when I spoke to the person in charge of the pilot program, when I spoke to her, she kept reiterating that to me. This is not new, it's adding a perspective to lessons that are already in place in your school. So it works within the confines of the curriculum that we're already doing, we're already working on, the lessons that our staff are already doing. It's just adding another layer of conversation, another layer of discussion to what's already happening in the classroom. So it's nothing new than what we're already doing.
And we're already obligated by a previous law to do that with African Americans and Hispanic ethnic groups. So we've implemented those inclusive natures into our curriculum, and I suspect we're doing a good job with that. I don't know, but I suspect we do a good job with that. So I suspect, our English language teachers and our social science teachers, I think, are very professional and very capable of discerning and taking those things out which will satisfy our community.
And they are gonna do the disability as well?
Yes.
Yeah, which is another plus.
And then, Amy, isn't that disclaimer pretty, like in everything we sign? It's in everything I sign.
It's a standard disclaimer, and it's just putting you on notice that if something happens, you can't go back after them. And that's most likely because it's a pilot and they're trying to push things out. But as Mr. Kubricki said, the highlight is you have the 30-day termination clause. So if after you go to the initial meeting, if it's something that you guys say, you know what, it's not for us, you can go ahead and terminate it.
Are there any other board members that want to attend on December 3rd?
I do.
If anyone
I think
else
it's a
wants
great
to,
idea.
you could just let
Or
Kim or I
please.
know.
I'm supposed to RSVP if it gets approved tonight by Friday, so just please let me
So
know.
far, we have Mr. K and
Yep.
Kim. Okay. All right,
Share a ride.
new business?
Be nice if another board member who's returning next year also would come.
Okay. All right.
You mean the third one?
At the December 3rd meeting that they're having, it would be nice if when, you know, for the,
I am returning.
so you're coming?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. You must have missed that one.
I missed
That's
that
okay.
part, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, under new business, I think Mr. Brown has already kind of covered our capital.
Can I do old business real fast?
Yeah, I do want to be clear
No,
that
because I'm not done with new.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I
the-
thought you said under new business.
we
said
talked
no.
about
This
it,
is staying here.
I thought we were in new business. Okay.
we had talked about a review of the IT infrastructure. But this is something that we discussed in the president, vice president meeting. We, through our process of kind of going through our scope of work and the capital project and where we are, came to learn about firms that provide reviews of substantial scopes of work, like a capital project, that can provide an assessment of the scope of work, the items that were completed versus the original plan scope and the completed scope. And the discussion was, is it of interest to the board, considering that a number of board members have changed throughout the course of this project and a number of administrators have changed throughout the course of this project, to have a third-party firm evaluate the scope of work start to finish and say, yay or nay, is this a satisfactory? And I certainly want to say that we've checked all the boxes on there, but we also had a number of unforeseen events and want to make sure that everybody is accountable as they should be towards contract terms. And thought we would pose it to the board as a possibility that a third-party review might be appropriate here.
Well, I think more importantly than, yes, we've had administrative changes, we've had board member changes, but more importantly, we've had contractor changes through the scope of the work. So I can certainly understand why you'd want an outside party going, to make sure nothing is left undone or undiscovered.
I think for the overall investment that we've made, it's a no-brainer to do something like that, so we can all rest easy.
Well, I think to be fair, we have to get an idea of cost, right,
Sure,
like we do
cost.
everything else. And so we do have them, there's only one firm that we found that was brought to our attention, so I'm gonna meet with them next week. We actually had a meeting scheduled for Friday, got rescheduled for next week. After we meet with them and understand that scope a little bit more, we'll solicit
Other-
additional quotes from other firms as
Okay.
well,
So we've had a construction manager.
Right.
which changed during the term of the contract. We had two.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than one environmental manager, more than one superintendent, more than one business administrator, and more than 9 board members on that project. And so I think the question was, because of the change during that period, would it be of interest? So I think that we're
So
posing
you're
here.
just asking you're just gonna go ahead and get a quote, get some information.
It was a point of information we brought up to Pat and Sue.
Would the cost be covered under the referendum cost, or?
I think it's appropriate for that, but we would certainly get the auditor's input to make sure that that was kosher with our, inside of the scope of capital projects.
Okay, the only other thing under, new,
Make
Oh,
all.
I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead,
done with that.
I'm sorry.
Tony, you
And
can go.
With that occurring, will we also be getting a sign off, because the one that has been consistent is our architect of record for Pinelands Regional? Has he signed off that all of these projects have been completed and completed to satisfaction?
So when he gets to a final payment application, the final payment application is his confirmation that the project has met the requirements, and it's also his confirmation and the contractor's confirmation that they don't have any outstanding liens. There's a lot of releases in final payment applications. And so certainly this is something we're gonna talk to Brooks about as well. I think it would be, we wanted to make sure it was part of the discussion tonight before we wasted too much time sitting down with people and talking about it if there was zero interest from the board.
No, I think it's more than appropriate, especially after having two different construction managers. Because if it's within reason, and it's possibly something that could be covered with the scope of the referendum, because it is part of it to ensure to the boards and to the communities that each and every one of these things that we're paid for, we're done. So thank you for considering that.
I think we're at the
A
point
wise
of
investment.
providing a nice, tying this thing up nicely for the community and giving everybody peace of mind that, that their investment was, that their expectations were met with this investment.
All right, I have one more thing under new business before, Kim, you have something under old,
Yeah.
right? In seating our new board members, obviously, we always, as president, I think I have a concern to not only protect the board, but to protect the district. And one of our new board members may be conflicted out of certain things. So am I allowed to say her name?
No.
No? No? She's not my employee. She's not our employee.
Come on, you say she works in another
Okay.
school district.
The person joining our board works in another school district, happens to be Little Egg, is also a member of their education association. So I had some concerns here. I had spoken to Mary Ann Friedman about it. Mary Ann had advised me that our best course of action would be to actually ask for an advisory opinion by the SEC prior to her being seated or sworn in on the board. Not that the SEC will be done with it, because I don't think they will. It's usually a 2-month process. But I did reach out to the person, very cooperative. I welcomed her to the board. She gave me the information I need. I've turned everything over to Amy. I just want to make sure that the board is aware of that and that they're okay with that, because it's kind of a double whammy conflict, being part of the Education Association and then also being an employee of Little Egg Harbor. So what I'm looking for is for the advisory committee to just give us a clear-cut outline of, okay, there would be conflicts here, 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 and here, and therefore this person could not vote on these things, so that everybody's protected. Are we okay with this?
So you're asking for a formal opinion
Yes,
from
I am.
school ethics?
Yes, it is.
Now, are we also confirming that she will not sit on the board until that comes back?
No,
All
no,
right.
because no way, I mean, when I spoke to Mary Ann, there's no way they're gonna say, oh, this person can't sit on the board. They're not, they're not gonna say that. And I'm
I
sure
thought you
that.
said that, I thought I heard you say that she shouldn't be
No,
seated.
I
Okay.
said the SEC won't have it done by the time she's sworn in, because it is pretty much, I think, a 2-month process.
Yeah, and then the holidays, I don't know how their meetings.
Right, because they usually set to determine which cases they're gonna hear at their next meeting. So, it'll be a while.
But she doesn't work for our school.
She works for Little
For
Egg.
Little Egg.
We share a superintendent, that's.
So I just think my thoughts are, it's a wise decision. I feel like let's get this out of the way, so if there are any limitations or boundaries, I think it protects everyone involved.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I would prefer we move forward with that and
Right.
with that she's
Be
responsible.
okay?
Amy, do you have an opinion as our attorney?
About getting the advisory opinion?
No, about whether or not you think this person would be conflicted.
So, when you talk about conflicts, you have to look at the individual person and their ties to individual items. So because that person works in Little Egg, that person will be conflicted on anything regarding her supervisors. So that would be anything related to Melissa's contract. So there could be some very specific items that the person is conflicted from. We've gotten advisory opinions from the School Ethics Commission in other districts that were specific about what that person could or could not vote upon. So my assumption would be very similar to that the SEC, as Sue said, doesn't say you can't sit on the board. It says you have to be careful and these are the items you can and can't vote on, et cetera. So I think it's always a good idea to get an advisory opinion, but my guess is it will most likely outline what they can and can't do, such as the superintendent's contract, negotiations because they're in the NJEA, certain grievances because they're in the NJEA, et cetera.
Certain
And I would-
recommendations by their supervisors.
Well, my
Right, I
concern
would
is,
think-
we've gone this road before, and I was personally affected by it, and the long and short of it was, I wasn't conflicted. It took months and months and months. And it was a major decision that I wasn't allowed to be involved in. So I don't think we should necessarily tie this person's hands on the fact that maybe she's conflicted, because maybe she's not. And the voters voted her in, and I think it's the fair thing to do, and to go ahead and do it, but not exclude her from what we think she may be conflicted of, when maybe she's not.
I don't think that's
It's
our-
gonna be taking a long
She can
time.
I don't think
absolutely be
that's our
sworn
intent,
in.
though.
I know,
Absolutely.
but that's what happened to me. I don't think
Right.
it was anybody's intention either, but
Right.
I don't think it was fair then, and I certainly don't think it would be fair now. So I would just, I support the idea of going ahead and do it, so we have a clear definition. If we get a clear definition, it doesn't say.
And
that
that's
we
it.
might- you might just get a
You hit the
reference
nail on the
to-
head with that, you
Yeah,
really
and
did.
it might,
So
you
it's
know,
not,
ethics
it's
commission.
not.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel that she should be excluded, but I
Right,
can't see,
I agree.
it's not like Melissa's evaluation or anything's coming up, so.
I'm just-
Especially doing more and more shared. I mean, it would be nice to, you know,
Sometimes we dot our i's and cross our t's, and then we end up,
Shooting herself in the foot.
well, we just don't make decisions. We're just more worried about the details and the big picture here. I don't want to lose the big picture here. She
We
was
do have
voted-
good legal representation in the interim period before the SEC
Right,
confirm. I
right.
think Amy's firm and their other school districts where they have a community like this where a number of conflicts exist on a regular basis, where family members are on boards and things like that. So I think their firm has excellent experience understanding
That
what
was my
conflicts
point
and
of
can give us
asking
some
Amy,
guidance
that
in the meantime.
as these things come up, you can certainly advise us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, old business, Kim?
Senator Sweeney was able to come to the district, but it was during our break. So, and I let the girl, you know, how it is. They're busy, so we're waiting for a second date. And then, the delegates meeting is the 23rd, and I'll be there, and then legislative committee is December. So I'll ask about that LGBT thing at the curriculum, because usually somebody from the Board of Ed is there too.
Right.
But the delegates meeting, Senator Sweeney is also gonna be there, so
Okay.
hopefully he'll.
And you are going to the one on the
I'm
23rd?
going to both, yeah.
Right, okay.
That's it.
All right, moving on to item number 10, the Residents Forum. This is for agenda items only. Please be aware of other people who would like to speak and be polite. Anybody like to talk to us?
Good evening, and my name is Peter Cardillo, I live at 48 My Way. My wife and I have put 9 children through the school district here. And one of them, Joseph, is still in here. He's in 9th grade, and many of you know Teresa. You worked with here. She served a term on the board with you. Most often, I'm recognized as Mary's father. So anywhere we go in town with Mary, people know Mary. So we're grateful to be a part of this community. You've offered us a lot in terms of our education. 5 of the boys have graduated college already, and we're happy with the district. A lot of new information was given tonight. I want to talk about the LGBTQ pilot program. I respect Dr. Clark. My boys really love her husband as they surf together. I think he's given them a couple of surfboards. But I'm going to present my remarks as I had planned anyway, because I think it's going to present an alternative approach to implementing this curriculum. So the state insists that in 2020, we begin telling the students not only about the accomplishments of notable people, but also about their unique sexual identities and sexual preferences. I don't understand that, but that's where we are now, and I think there's no way around that at this point. I did a little research myself also. I learned that New Jersey is only the 2nd state behind California to adopt this LGBTQ curriculum. And I think some of your instincts to distrust a group that's a lobby, that's an advocacy group are good instincts. And as you know, on top of that, here in Ocean County, we live in probably the most conservative part of the state. So, notwithstanding Dr. Clark's presentation, I think an obvious question remains. What's the hurry? Why jump the gun? Apparently there's another 500 districts who are going to find their way into this curriculum and probably fudge their way through it. I'm not saying we should fudge it, but we have time. Why volunteer our children for a pilot program on a sensitive issue that many residents will find objectionable? I do realize, again, this is coming in 2020 regardless, but why rush? I have two concerns. I'm going to share them very briefly. First of all, does this pilot curriculum, and you'll learn this as you go, I suppose, does it inform or does it also celebrate and does it perhaps indoctrinate? As I understand the law, this new law will require only the first one, and that's to inform. GSE, the organization creating the program, aggressively advocates, has been noted, for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer ideology. So I suspect that GSE is interested in doing much more than merely informing. And that's my concern. Therefore, this is my second point, and this would be an alternative approach. Why not form a committee which will take the next 8 months to craft a curriculum that will satisfy state requirements without being offensive to parents? And this is a little bit of a diversion, but it's brief. I want to remind this committee, this board, that the committee that's formed to do this, which is going to have to be representative, obviously, not like the committee 2 years ago, many of you remember, that was asked to evaluate the Sex, Etc. magazine in the middle school. That committee, formed by the administration, though aware of very real worries about the magazine, voted unanimously to recommend to you, the board, that the sex magazine continue in the media center. The superintendent at that time eagerly told me about the committee's findings, letting me know that the vote was unanimous, and adding insult to injury, she also told me that the Sex, Etc. magazine could properly be made available to 6th graders as well. Nevertheless, you, the Board of Ed, voted 7-2 to remove the magazine, for which I was grateful, as we had a 7th grader here in the middle school at the time. And I remind you of that story because of a very important takeaway for me, and it's this. Apparently, the Board of Education is far more representative of the community than the administration. This is as it should be, and it's just an example of checks and balances working well. So I want to still urge you to abandon the pilot and let a committee of parents and teachers, board members, thoughtfully develop a curriculum which will satisfy the state mandate without pushing an agenda or upsetting parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardillo. Anybody else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Kirk Olson, 228 Western Avenue in Tucker. My daughter was at school last Friday.
Mr. Olson, is this about an agenda item?
No.
You can't. This forum is for agenda items only. The one at the end of the meeting.
Number 12.
Pardon me?
Is that number 12?
Yes.
Okay, so I got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Mike Delaprudi. I live at 53 Brook Street in Little Lake Harbor. I'm also the pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in Little Lake Harbor. And I'd like to start by stating that I really appreciate everything you do for the children of our community. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to address you. Just to be upfront, I'm also going to ask you to reconsider the pilot program that was presented tonight, but I want to do so respectfully. I understand a lot of work went into this, and I really hope to allow for open dialogue in the future. I've taken significant time to examine Garden State Equality's website as well as read the LGBTQ inclusive curriculum proposed by the GSE. And honestly, it contains some goals that I think everyone can and should agree with. Like page 5 that states the purpose of this program is to teach respect for people of various backgrounds and enable students to function as productive citizens. Those are noble intentions. My concern is that GSE identifies as an advocacy group and presents some very questionable goals on their website. For example, the GSE is an organization that the organization responsible for this program, they proudly promote a post-marriage environment. And the term post-marriage, it's presented right on their website. And as a member of this community who is directly involved with starting and saving marriages, I don't see how that ideology will produce productive or respectful citizens. It's more likely to serve to undermine the most ancient and sacred tradition governing human relationships. Now, I strongly support education. I'm presently a PhD candidate, and I've recently published a book examining the treatment of gender dysphoric children, 80% of whom desist. So after reading GSE's website and pilot curriculum, I'm asking you to reconsider this course of action. Rather than submit students to an experimental program developed by an outside group of self-proclaimed activists, I would also encourage you to create a committee of community members to develop a program that would satisfy state guidelines without undermining family values or redirecting classroom time away from the classics of math, science, English, history, music. Such an emphasis is more likely to produce productive and respectful members of society. And going out on a limb here, I would be willing to assist in any way possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak with us this evening? Okay, then let's move on to A, instructional. Could I please have a motion to approve items 1 through 8? Motion needed.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
All right, Mr. Barchetto.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes on all but A3.
Is that a
Is
no
that a
or
no
an
or an
abstention?
That's a no.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kubricki.
Yes, with the comment that certainly I'm aware of the comments made by the public tonight with respect to A3, and that's why I'm going to the meeting on December 3rd, and I am hopeful and confident that the staff and the teachers, as well as the board and the community, will be able to determine whether those concerns shared by the community are warranted or whether they're not. So I'm voting yes to all of the items with that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kubricki. Ms. Hannadel?
Yes.
Ms. Paklakua?
Yes, with the exception of A3.
Is that an abstention or?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. McVeigh?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes, and I would like to reiterate Mr. Kubricki's remarks for A3. I will support this, but I have a great deal of faith and a great deal of trust in the staff that they will not, that they will ensure the safety and the mental and emotional health of our students. And if something is found to be alarming by them, that they would immediately report it to Dr. McCooley. And I know that Mr. Kubricki will be there as a watchdog, as will Mrs. Hannadel. So, and I thank you for that very much. So I am a yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Moving on to personnel, I need a motion for items B1 through B12.
So made.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Item 2, I had asked a question and I did not have a chance to see if you responded, but on item 2, the sixth period stipend, there were at the junior high school a large number of them for the math and English. if
I did respond
So
on
I
that.
see them in special
Yep.
ed.
get.
And the 6-period stipends in the junior high was the schedule that was approved by the Board of Ed. We actually had a presentation this summer that language arts and math are double periods.
Oh, right.
So one is serving as an elective, so instead of the 6-period stipend going towards the elective, it goes to ELA and math.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Okay, Mr. Barqueta.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki.
Yes.
Ms. Hannadel.
Yes.
Mrs. Papakua.
Yes, with the exception of 9, I will abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Mrs. McVeigh.
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under item C, operations, I would like a motion to approve item C 1 and 2. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Under the facilities use, do we not need one for doing the update? We talked about the Wildcat Shack
Shack, the
opening.
Legacy
Do we
Center.
need a facilities use form for that? For the board to approve, right? So I had asked a few questions just to make sure everything was, fully support all the efforts. I just want to make sure everything is in order.
I think
When we talked last month after the presentation, you had noted that it didn't need to be approved, it was more like a facilities use of an outside organization. Thinking, does it need to be approved, or if we could look into it, we can add it maybe for next.
So,
month.
I think we'll look into it because technically it's our shack, but other people are going to be using it.
Right, so it's not our shack. It's an
And
outside group.
people will be going in and out.
So I just think we just need to be clear and make sure that the district
But
is protected.
We're running it.
So it's,
Our staff
our
is.
staff is running it, yes.
But as part of an outside organization.
I think they were more the
Not-
upstart portion of
It wasn't the
Kind of-
facility,
They were
yeah,
the
we didn't talk about the
Kickstarter
facilities
of-
use last month, we talked about donations. And you were asking, is every time that someone bring a donation, do we need to approve it?
Or
wasn't
does
the
our-
facilities
or our
use.
staff for the extra hours where they.
The extra hours for the staff, they're getting volunteer hours for that.
Which is
So-
part of the district policy, right?
It's
So I
part of
just
the
think we're
contract, it's
mixing-
part of their
What's
contract.
required of them.
So we can look
But
at
the district hours are
specifically,
for district positions and district training and district volunteering, right? This is, I just feel like it's very gray. Is this a district initiative or is it not? And I just think it needs to be clear and that we just need to make sure that if we need to, something happens, we did all the right steps to make sure that the district was protected. We're having people coming and
So-
going.
I'm gonna ask Nick some questions and if we need to do it, we can put it on the agenda for December.
That would be great.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay.
All right, Mr. Barqueta.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Abstain on 1, yes on 2.
Okay, Mr. Kubricki.
Yes.
Ms. Hannadel.
Yes.
Ms. Papakua.
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh.
Yes.
And Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Under item D, report of the board secretary, business administrator, I need a motion for items number 1 through 11.
So made.
Second,
Second.
any discussion or questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Karen, then I will.
I think mine are quick. 11G. Who is that, being paid for by the district or by the volleyball program?
Number G.
G, 11G.
We paid out of their program.
That's what I expected. Thank you. 8, the donations from Dorn Bus Company. I think this was maybe a late edition. I don't remember seeing it, but,
That's a donation they make on an annual basis for a trip that we do.
so
and
they're
Durham
donating one
donates
bus
the-
trip, not one bus.
Yeah, they donate the trip for that,
Okay.
for those group of students to attend that production at that theater.
So one bus trip,
Yes.
not the bus.
I'll see if they'll give us the bus.
Well, I'd like
$450, that'd be nice.
It says one bus for $450, so,
We could use a bus, so.
yeah.
Gina wants a bus.
D5,
wants a bus.
where's this funding coming from, and was it adequately budgeted for?
And do you have to include Stephen and I wasn't sure.
And, yeah,
No, this is for travel, so if we get your ride, Kim.
Training's free.
We can
This is-
hitch a ride.
This is for mileage.
This
Yes,
is
this
just for
within-
mileage.
this is
And it's in our
within the
professional
budgets.
development budget.
Yeah.
And Mr. Kubricki can ride with
of,
Make everybody double up, cut
the
it.
bus. We'll take the bus for $450.
Yeah, let's take the bus.
Any other questions under item D?
The items that are being donated, the textbooks, 6-2, item 6, number 2. In the recent past, we've been taking advantage of, I think it was the Stockton program, to donating the books.
Mhm.
Will we be doing that with this as well?
We did pass this along to Mr. K. I don't know if you got any feedback from Stockton on that?
I haven't contacted them since, I guess, the one time when, you know, I had given the contact person's name, and I don't know how reliable that person was in
Okay,
getting
yeah.
back.
These books are quite old and damaged. I don't think they would,
Aren't these the ones that
These were
Roska said
Yeah.
are moldy?
Yeah.
yes.
Oh.
where the leak was?
We do reach out to the rep from Stockton
Yeah.
if there are books that we think they'd want to take, but these were quite old.
And then, if nobody else has, I have one last one. Item 10. So this is a first payment?
We're contractually obligated to pay for these fees for everybody for the year. Ms. Nash joined a little bit later after the PO process had already been initiated for everybody else, so she paid it on her card, and it's a reimbursement that we're contractually obligated to pay for their fees.
So we would expect to see the next 2 payments come through as well then?
One more. They're one year you pay for 2 years. You pay one each year.
There's 2 payments in total, there's 3 payments total listed, one is due next year, one is due in 10 months, one is due in 24 months.
My understanding was that, by law, they're required to be mentored for
Right.
2 years. And this is the cost of that.
This is strictly the reimbursement of the $850 she already spent to comply with her licensing requirements. In any subsequent years, she's going to get that paid through a PO where the rest of the administrative staff does.
I believe you're talking about the mentoring payments for the
So she doesn't
$1,500
have
and
to-
$1,000 for the.
She
No.
has a certificate of eligibility, and she has that for 2 years.
I was gonna say, I thought so.
Yeah,
'Cause
so
this
then-
is our new hire.
Yes,
correct?
and then she has that for 2 years. She has to go through the Leader to Leader program, and there's a cost to that. So that it's part of their contract that the district picks that up. Whether it's made in 3 payments, or it used to be 1 a year, we pay it.
So does this come out of the Primo?
Yes.
The
Pool?
total
Yes.
Primo pool of money?
Yep.
It's part of that?
Yes.
Got it, thank you.
No worries.
Any other questions?
All right, Mr. Barchetto,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes, excluding number 5, no, and number 10 abstain. I didn't get a chance to look at the contract to see if it was in there.
Mr. Kubricki,
Yes, with the exception of number 1, bills list item 20-00843.
so that's a specific payment on the bills list?
Yes.
That you're abstaining from or voting
I'm
against?
voting no on that, 20-00843.
Okay. All right. Ms. Amidel,
Yes.
Ms. Pakakua,
Yes, with the exception of items 1 and 2. I will need to abstain. Links weren't working for me when I had an opportunity to look.
all right, Ms. McVeigh,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
All right, moving on to item number 12, residents forum. This is on general items pertaining to the school, etc. Again, we ask you to please be respectful and mind your time limit. Anybody wish to speak?
My name is Kirk Olson, 228 Western Avenue in Tuckerton. Last Friday, one of my daughters came home and told me that somebody had put something on her locker that said, "Die." So she came home, she told my wife and I. We came over to the school because we were obviously concerned. And we were told by the lady inside the room over there that there were no administrators available to speak to us. When I walked in, I had said to the lady that we have a security issue, and she didn't quite sure how to handle it. She said no administrators were available. I saw two of them walk right past us in the hallway. So for whatever reason, they weren't going to let us in the school. So they told us to call the police. So we called the police. The police showed up over there with my wife is there, my daughter is there as well. But the school wouldn't let us in. They wouldn't let us in to go see my daughter's locker with somebody telling her to die. Now, we all know that these things can end very badly. I came into the school to tell you folks that somebody's telling my daughter to die. And you folks can't even meet me at the door. You can't even let my wife and I, with a police officer, into the school to take a look at what happened. I have 7 kids. The majority of them have gone through here. But if your kid came home and was told to die, what would you do? I'd be interested to know. What is it that my wife and I did that you folks couldn't even let us in the door with a police officer? While we're waiting there are girls coming in off of the track over there asking to go to their lockers to get something that they forgot, and the lady let them in. I show up with my wife and my daughter, and I see a few of the administrators that obviously don't have any time for us walking in the hallway. This happened November 1st. Today's the 13th. I just got the police report yesterday. Yesterday. That's 12 days. I haven't heard from the school yet. I kept my daughters out of school because we were on break. I kept my daughters home that Monday, this past Monday, because nobody's told us anything. Nobody's told us that there's a hidden investigation going on. Nobody told us that the police are handling it, because we couldn't even get a hold of the police. I went to the police station between my wife and I 4 times to get a police report. 12 days to get a police report. Still haven't heard from the school as to what happened with my daughter. I understand you may not be able to say who is involved and what happens in the end, but this is a serious problem. Today, it's over there. Tomorrow it could be here with some kid coming in here with a gun because you folks aren't listening. So I'm curious to hear any of you people, what is it that my wife and I did wrong that we couldn't go inside that school with a police officer?
Mr. Olson, unfortunately, the board is not allowed to comment on student matters. In addition, I know you are represented by counsel, and your counsel was advised about what had happened. If your counsel did not share it with you, I'm sorry about that. That's something I would reach out to your counsel.
Well, what does that have to do with what happened on November 1st? What does that have to do with what happened on November 1st?
You had said that you had not heard anything from the school district, so I was responding.
Anybody, from
to
the
that.
police, not the school district, anybody.
But you are represented by counsel.
On a different matter, on a different matter.
But your counsel contacted my office, therefore.
And
we
who's
have
your
to
office
respond.
exactly? Are you the, okay.
We have to respond to your counsel, which we did.
When was that?
We responded today.
12 days later, right?
Mr. Olson, I'm not gonna go back and
Okay,
forth with you.
all right.
If you have a specific concern, my suggestion would be.
Call the
follow
police?
change-
Should I call
you
the police
follow-
again?
Excuse me, Mr. Olson, you follow the chain of command.
And I
You
did.
set up a meeting, do you set up a meeting with Dr. McCooley? Because that would be the chain of command.
You know what, I don't know if it's safe to send my daughters to school here. How do I do that? Do I just call Dr. McCooley's office and say, hey, listen, somebody's threatened my daughter, what do I do about it? Is that what I do? I would have, but you know what? That Friday, school was off all next week.
And Mr. Olson, I can assure you, I am available to parents whenever the school is off. I am available nights, weekends. I haven't heard from you. This is the first time I'm hearing about this situation. As Ms. Hauk said, you are represented by an attorney.
Yes.
So I know there was correspondence between that. Regardless, if there's a different situation that does not relate to the situation that you have an attorney for, and you feel that there's a safety issue, there is a chain of command. Mr. Henderson is very receptive. If for some reason you're not hearing back from him when you reach out to him, you are always welcome to contact me. I have never heard from you.
Well, I went to the school, like I said, and they wouldn't let us in with a police officer.
I understand that, and then this was, like you said, 13 days ago. Between now and then, I have not heard from you. I would have absolutely taken a
Am I
call,
supposed to hear
email.
from you, or am I supposed to hear from somebody from the school that's okay to send my daughters back to school?
Mr. Olson, once again, there's
Okay.
a chain of command, and I never heard from you regarding this matter. I would have absolutely responded.
I came to the school to notify you about the matter.
I'm not at that school.
I'm
not
sorry,
at that
I
school.
notified the school of the issue, and we weren't even greeted at the door.
Okay, if you'd like to speak with me tomorrow about this, I'd be more than happy to call you.
I think at this particular point in time, obviously, Mr. Olson, you know, you're upset. I'm not saying that it's not justified, but I really do think that in order to resolve this and get to the bottom of it, the best thing to do would be maybe call and set up an appointment with Dr. McCooley and see if we can't get to the bottom of this. Obviously, she has not heard about this. If it went to her administrators, they have not informed her of this. So that would be, again, and I'm just a layman, just like you, that would be my advice, to not escalate the problem in order. Let's.
So you're asking me to
find
have
a solution.
patience that I've been having for quite some time already. I will, I'll have patience.
Thank you.
You can get my number, feel free to give me a call, and we'll see what we can do. But I'm gonna be
I'll call
busy
you
tomorrow
tomorrow.
at school, though. I'll be here tomorrow during the day.
Okay.
We'll see.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak this evening? No? Okay, moving on then, to our last board forum. AJ, I will start with you.
I would just like to thank Dr. Clark for all her work with the new curriculum. Looking forward to just, you know, inclusive environment for all individuals.
Thank you, AJ. Stephen?
You thinking?
I'm thinking,
Don't think too long.
Save it for
now I
next.
won't, because I was thinking whether I should comment on the public comment, because I think when public comments, they deserve some type of thing, but the gentleman left, so I think that there's no point
And
in
I would
making
remind you that we have to be cautious.
cautious. That's what I was thinking,
Yes.
is so how I would phrase that and what I would say to do that, but now, you know, I'll just leave that go.
Thank you, Stephen. Karen?
Thank you for coming. Congratulations to the students of the month. Congratulations, I know our sports teams did well. Look forward to winter seasons. And I don't know, is there anything else? That's all. Thank you all.
Betty Ann?
Oh, I'd just like to thank the administrative staff and Melissa for steering us in a good direction here. Good stuff happening here. Thank you. Thank you.
Kim?
Yes, me too. Everybody, thank you for your work, and Kim, thank you for the pilot program. I think, you know, that we're finally gonna represent the 10 to 20% of kids that are up there. There's no recruitment here, I'm sure, but, you know, I do take issue with that, but at the same time, I think it's a really tough world for certain kids, and the fact that we could be just making it a little easier would be a great thing. And I don't even know how we would be able to sit down and come up with this curriculum myself, so I think I think we really need this, so that's it.
Thank you, Kim. Tommy?
I'd like to thank you all for your time and to see that we are diverse here. and we can have diverse discussions. And we should thank those for the day that just passed, which is November 11th, that our veterans have given us our freedoms to be able to have these discussions. Thank you.
I really don't have anything to add. I would like to congratulate, who was it, Leanne Lacuter, for that. That is pretty nifty. I remember I was at, it was decades ago. They didn't give me any pizza.
We're having pizza for you, we told you.
I don't really like pizza. Sorry.
Oh, you have to come up with a different
Oh,
menu
well.
too?
I do want to thank the administration for their hard work on this. And, you know, I do trust our staff to do what's right and to make sure that our children feel safe. So I think that's the most important component. I'm not handing our kids over to strangers. That you do have with us.
Good night.
So, I know. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:10 p.m. Thank you all.
Why am I choking?
Eat those